Are you in the market for some carrot cake muffins that won't consume all of your bites, points, or calories for the day? I have the perfect solution for you here. These are my carrot cake muffins with cream cheese filling. You don't have to use the filling, but it is a nice little surprise in the middle. But if you want to see how these are done, stick around because it's coming up next. Hello and welcome to my kitchen. My name is Roy. I am a home cook and amateur baker, and I am here on this channel sharing recipes that have helped me to lose over 125 pounds, whether those recipes are mine or someone else's. Surprise, surprise, it's one of mine. And those of you who follow me on social media, you may have seen this already on my Instagram and Facebook groups. This is for my carrot cake muffins with or without cream cheese filling. Now this filling is optional. You don't have to do it. You could just make plain carrot cake muffins. You could make carrot cake muffins and then use my cream cheese pudding mix frosting that I have on my blog and frost the top if you want to do that instead. But it's kind of nice to have that little surprise when you bite into it and you get a little bit of that cream cheese filling. And as you can see, I do not have enough ingredients here to make carrot cake muffins. There aren't even any carrots. That's because we need to start with the filling if you are using the filling. So it's just 4 ingredients. I have 4 ounces or half a cup of my light homemade cream cheese, which is 0 bites made from non-fat Greek yogurt. And if you have not seen that, I did my very first video where I did an introduction and then did this light homemade cream cheese. And I will put a card up here for that. I also separated out the cream cheese part and put it into a tutorial. So I will have both of those linked below. If you want to get to know me better, if you haven't seen my first video where I talked a bit about my background, then that one will be down there. If you just want the cream cheese, that one will be down there too. But we have a half a cup or 4 ounces of that cream cheese, 1 egg at room temperature, 1/2 cup of sugar replacement. I use Swerve, but you can use whatever is a 1-to-1 replacement for sugar. If it's something that's stronger than sugar that you have to adjust, just substitute whatever would equal 1/2 cup of sugar. And then I have just 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. That's all we need. We are going to, you can see, even though I drained most of the liquid from the cream cheese, there is still some moisture in here, some liquid, and that's fine. It's only because it's been sitting out coming to room temperature, so it will release some more of that liquid, but I'm going to keep that in there. Just going to put this into a bowl where I can mix this up. So you'll want this in the freezer for about an hour to firm up. If it has to go any longer than that, say you wanted to prep it ahead, just take it out of the freezer and put it in the fridge so it stays firm but is not going to freeze solid, because once it's solid, it's solid. So anyways, the cream cheese goes in, the egg goes in, the sugar replacement, and the vanilla. So now that all of that's in there, we're just going to take our whisk, break up that egg a bit. Now you could, if you wanted, lightly beat the egg before you put it in to help incorporate it, but I'm not that concerned. It usually comes together pretty quickly. So we're just going to whisk this together until it's smooth. You want to get out as many of those lumps of cream cheese as you can. If they're little chunks, tiny chunks, that's fine. You don't have to be perfectly smooth here, but you do want it as smooth as you can get it. And that looks pretty good. There's a few little lumps of cream cheese, but that is not going to hurt anything. Let me grab my plastic wrap, which I forgot to bring out. Shocker. And I'm going to cover this, and I will put this in the freezer So in about a half an hour, we'll start preheating the oven and working on the muffins so that we time this pretty well. But I will be back in a second to show you all of our muffin ingredients. Okay, so this looks much more like the ingredients for a muffin. So for the carrot cake muffins, what we have is 1/2 cup of almond milk at room temperature. Here I have shredded carrots, obviously because these are carrot cake muffins. This is 2 cups or about 200 to 210 grams. I usually start off with about 4 good-sized carrots. I've weighed them out and it could be anywhere from 350, 375 grams to get 200 grams, 210 grams shredded. But about 4 medium should be sufficient. And you want to shred them on the large side of the grater, not the small side. But it actually made the muffins a little more gummy because more moisture was released because the carrot pieces were so small. So you want to use the larger side of your grater. I have here a 1/2 cup or 60 grams of walnuts. Now I'm going to toast them and then chop them. You don't want to chop them before you measure them. You want 1/2 cup as it is. I find it easier just to measure them because walnuts tend to be in wonky shapes. So measuring 60 grams is just easier, but about 1/2 cup. But I will be showing you how to toast those. I have 2 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 cup of brown sugar replacement, I use Swerve, 2 eggs at room temperature, 1/4 cup of non-fat Greek yogurt at room temperature, and a 1/2 cup of applesauce, unsweetened applesauce at room temperature. I store mine in the fridge, so I made sure. If yours isn't in the fridge, then you don't obviously need to bring it to room temperature. But that way, as I've said, all of the wet ingredients can combine more easily than if they were right out of the fridge. I have here a 1/2 cup of protein powder. I like adding the protein powder because it takes the place of some of the flour and can reduce the bites or points. It also adds a little protein that I'm sure I need. But if you have problems with protein powder, I did have someone ask me about swapping out the protein powder, as I've mentioned before, for flour. It is a 1-to-1 swap. So if you don't want to use the protein powder, if you can't use protein powder, just do a 1/2 cup extra of flour. So you don't have to do the protein powder. That's just one way I can keep the bites and points down. Now, if you have a recipe that you use, say a cake or some dessert of some sort, and you want to try to reduce the bites a little bit, swapping out about maybe 1/4 of the flour for protein powder is a way to go. That might help to lower the bites or points on some of the items that you make. So you can play around with that in your recipe builder if you want to see if it would make a difference. I have here 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon of ginger, and 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. All right, so to toast our walnuts, I'm going to put our pan over medium heat and just put these in. That way the pan is warming up and the nuts will slowly start to warm up. And you want them in a fairly even layer. I won't have an overhead shot of this because it's just walnuts in a pan and I don't want to move the camera all over the place. But you just want them in one even layer. Let them sit here about 5 minutes and I'm going to keep tossing them around like this, just shaking them up so that they're not sitting in one spot for too long because then you might get some burnt pieces. So it just 5 minutes on the stove top over medium heat. Just move it around every once in a while. You will start to smell the change in the nuts. Right now I don't smell anything, but you will definitely notice a change once they've gotten close to being toasted. So that's just going to be about 5 minutes and I'll be back. Okay, our nuts are toasted and we are ready to move on. You want to let them cool slightly before you throw them into the batter. So it's been probably about 5 minutes since they came out and I chopped them up. You want them chopped up relatively finely just because we're not using a lot of walnuts in order to keep the bites and points down. So if you chop it more finely, it'll disperse more evenly and you'll be getting more bits of walnut throughout the muffin. Now you can leave this out completely and reduce the bites and points on this by 1. I'm on the Healthy Better Balance plan, which is equivalent to the old WW Blue plan, and that's what I go by, but you can put it in the recipe builder. You can also change the nuts for pecans if you want. I don't know for sure if that will change the bites or not. I know pecans tend to be slightly higher in bites and points than walnuts. You could also add raisins if you choose, craisins, you could add currants. You could add other things if you feel like it. Just make sure you put it into the recipe builder as you are doing it. You could even put coconut in it. I know a lot of carrot cakes do have coconut. You could add that. It would definitely change the bites and points. So just make sure you put it in the recipe builder. Where I can bring in my large bowl. And in here, we're just going to whisk the dry ingredients together to get them homogeneous. The flour, the protein powder, the baking powder, baking soda, salt, cinnamon, nutmeg, and ginger. So then we're just going to mix this, and you can tell when it's well mixed, especially with the cinnamon and the other spices, because it'll become a uniform tan color, not have streaks of that cinnamon. And that only takes a moment. This is the lazy man's way of sifting. That's my preferred method. All right, so that is done. We're going to set that aside. And then, let me clear up a few of these things and we'll move on with the wet ingredients. Okay, for the wet ingredients, I'm going to take my almond milk and add in the yogurt. We're just going to mix these two things together just to make sure that that yogurt gets distributed. If we added everything in together, we might overlook some chunks of yogurt. So I just like adding these two together first and whisking them until they're smooth and I don't see any clumps of yogurt. Just takes a moment because they're both at room temperature. And this is basically a substitute for buttermilk. So if you need buttermilk for a recipe and you're looking for a low bite, low point way of changing that up, some almond milk with about maybe 1/4 to 1/3 of that amount that you need in yogurt. Mix that together and it's basically a low bite, low point buttermilk. Now that those two are blended, I'm going to add in the eggs. Just break that up a smidge. And the applesauce. I'll need my spatula to get all of this out because applesauce is taking the place of oil and giving this some moisture. So you want to make sure you get all of that in there to make sure that these stay moist. Now I'm going to blend these two together and try not to spill it all over the place as I tend to do. If you've watched this channel, you know I'm not the cleanest of cooks, as Paul is well aware. All right, so that's blended. Now we're going to add in our brown sugar. We want to add this in with the wet because we want it to dissolve and disperse throughout the liquid. And it actually doesn't take too long to get it to melt into the liquid. And you'll see the mixture starting to turn brown. Now the reason I chose brown sugar, and you could use granulated sugar, it will just slightly alter the taste and texture. The brown sugar does two things. It gives it a kind of caramel note and enhances those spices, but it also adds a little bit of moisture. Brown sugar will add moisture to baked goods that granulated won't. But if you want, you could replace it with granulated sugar. It just will be a little different taste and slightly different texture. Okay, so that's mixed together. Let me clean up a few things and we'll move on. All right, so from here, we're just going to dump all of the wet into the dry and then mix that together. We're not expecting this at this moment. You'll still see bits of flour when you're ready to add the carrots and walnuts, because you do not want to overmix this or it will become tough, more like a bread dough than a muffin. And if you've ever wondered the difference between a cupcake and a muffin, it's not the frosting. That's usually what people think, but muffins can have frosting, like you could frost these and it would not make them a cupcake. The difference is in how they are combined. This is called the quick bread method, where you mix the dry, you mix the wet, and then you combine them together. When you're making cupcakes or even cakes, usually you are creaming the sugar and butter typically, but I will often use the replacement for the butter. So it could be pumpkin, could be applesauce, whatever it is. That's what I would combine with the sugar. All right, so there's still bits of white in here, and that's fine because we still have mixing to do once we add in our carrots and our walnuts. Our toasted walnuts. Now, toasting might seem like an excessive process, but it really does enhance the flavor of the nuts. I recommend it no matter what. Even just eating them, I would like having toasted nuts rather than just plain. All right, so we're just going to mix this around a little bit until that's all incorporated and we don't see any streaks of flour. So now we're going to start filling our pan, but I need to get my cream cheese filling out of the freezer. If you're not using the cream cheese filling, you can just portion this right into the muffin pan, just the way you would any muffins. But there's a special technique we're going to have to do to get this cream cheese filling to get in there correctly and not ruin the muffin. But I will tell you all about that once I get that filling out. Be right back. Okay, I have my filling, and you can see it's not solid. We just wanted it a little firmer than it was originally. And I have my muffin tin very well sprayed with baking spray. These are going to be very full pans. You want to make sure you spray it because they are going to mound up over the edge, and you want to be able to release them easily enough. As I said, if you were doing these just as muffins without the filling, all you have to do is fill the cupcake pan as you normally would. Now my little scoop here is much smaller than I would typically use. And you can see I'm not using liners. I'm really not a fan of liners, trying to peel them off. And I know silicone liners are a possibility, and I know I have some somewhere. But I just find it more to my liking not to use liners. If you do use liners, put them in and then still spray very well with the baking spray. So I'm going to take my small scoop and we're just going to put a bit into the bottom of each of these. Okay, so we have our muffin pan filled just partially. There's about a tablespoon or two of batter in there. Now what I'm going to do is take a spoon and I'm going to spray it lightly with cooking spray just so that I don't get much batter sticking to this, and I may need to reapply. But what you're going to do is make a well in the center of each muffin. Now I'm going to do it one at a time because by the time I come back, that will have filled in a little bit. So I'm going to take some of my filling here and just put that right into the center. And then what you need to do is take a little bit of the muffin mixture. I know this seems very fussy, but it's very important. We're going to make a little dam around that bit of filling, because what you do not want is you do not want the filling coming out to the edge. What happened in my first experiment was I just put it in and figured, oh, if it's spread all across, that'll be great because you'll get a little cream cheese filling in every bite. And what it did was once we took the muffins out, they split right down the middle where the cream cheese was because there was no muffin holding it together. So it became two pieces, almost like a sandwich. You don't want that. So I know this is a little fussy, but it's definitely worth it for that creamy little center. So let me continue. Let me do one more so that you can see what I'm doing. And just make a well. Add in some filling. And try to make sure you're getting right in the center. As I said, you don't want it coming out to the edges. And see, this one is starting to move towards the edge. I'm going to prod it back into place. And then start my dam right there. All right, so let me finish filling all of these, and then we'll be back to finish them up. Okay, so I'm on the last one, and I wanted to show you one little trick that may help keep the filling in the center. Is make your little well, and then when you take your scoop of filling, press it down into the batter so that you're pushing that well further down. Then it has more likelihood that it's going to stick around in the center and not go out to the edges. And I know this is a very fussy step, and as I said, you can just make plain carrot cake muffins if you'd prefer. You don't have to go through this. I just think it's nice to have that little surprise in the center. Instead of having like a frosting, although you could, as I said, use my cream cheese pudding mix frosting. It's your call, but now you will have some left over. There's a little bit left over. I'm probably just going to dump it because I haven't found any use for it yet. Now what I'm going to do is finish filling these cupcakes because I still have a fair amount of batter left. So you're just going to fill these, go right over the filling. Now I did try, in an effort to make these less fussy, to swirl the cream cheese through there, and all it did was absorb into the muffin. Did I don't know, I think I keep calling them cupcakes. They're not cupcakes, they're muffins. As I said, we did the quick bread method, but I did try swirling it in to be less fussy, and that didn't really do the trick. So if you want to do the filling, this is the best way to do it. Now, if some of the batter is sticking up out of if some of the filling is sticking up out of the muffins, that's no problem. It's just going to bake that way. But I do want to clear off any muffin and batter that is stuck to the edges so it doesn't burn, and any filling as well. There we have them. Now these are going to go into the oven for anywhere from 25 to 30 minutes, depending on the heat of your oven. I'm going to test them with a toothpick, but what you want to be careful of is testing towards the edge or just at the top, so that you're not going into the filling and getting moisture from the filling and thinking they're not done. But they will do them up nicely. When you touch them, you'll sense that they are really firm and set. That's what you're looking for, but a toothpick is the best way to be sure. So I'm going to give these, mine usually run to the 30-minute mark, and then I'll be back to show you what they look like. Okay, there we have them. Our carrot cake muffins with cream cheese filling. And again, you don't have to do the filling if you don't want. You can just make carrot cake muffins. But either way, you still have to let them sit for 5 minutes in the pan before you remove them. So I'll be back when it's time to take them out. Okay, so now is the moment of truth. I have my butter knife here just in case I need to loosen up any edges. But what I'm going to do is take my mitts, because these are still, the pan is still hot. I'm going to put the cooling rack on top, and with any luck, they will all come out, but I don't often have that kind of luck. Let's see what we... Wow, what do you know? I sprayed it well. And none of the cream cheese filling leaked to the sides, so they all look like they have perfect form. It's because before, the first time when I was telling you how they split, it was like right across the middle, so you'd have 2 pieces of a muffin. That's not what you want. But these look perfect and they smell amazing, mouth-watering. So I'm going to turn them right side up and let them cool completely. But while they are cooling, let me go over the nutrition facts. Now, with the cream cheese filling, these are going to be 3 Better Balanced Bites or Old Blue Points. Without the filling, there's still going to be 3. So it's your choice whether you want to use the filling or not. If you did decide to remove the walnuts, they would be 2 bites or 2 blue points. But I have the walnuts in there for that nice little texture and that little hint of toasted nut that is delicious. Now, as I made them with the cream cheese filling, if you are following calories, the calories would be 168. And if you're following macros, the fat would be 4.9 grams. The carbs would be 47.4 grams. The fiber would be 1.8 grams. And the protein would be 9.2 grams. And again, that's with the cream cheese filling. Without the cream cheese filling, as I said, they are still 3 Better Balanced Bites or Old Blue Points. But for calories, they drop only to 153. So not a big savings, about 15 calories. And if you're following macros without the cream cheese filling, the fat would be 4.5 grams. The carbs would be 36.9 grams. And you might be wondering, why did the carbs drop that much if you just took out the cream cheese filling? It's because of the sugar replacement. Sugar replacements do have carbs, typically. The fiber remains the same at 1.8 grams, and the protein would be 7.3 grams. And again, that's because I used the protein powder. If you chose to replace that with flour, as I said, a 1-to-1 swap, then that would obviously drop and the carbs would go up. So there is a balance there. One thing I did forget to mention that is very important, and it is in the recipe, but it bears mentioning here, is do not use those pre-shredded carrots that you find in a bag at the grocery store. They will not cook down enough to be palatable in these muffins. They will still have some of that firm texture, and that is not what you want. So I definitely recommend grating your own carrots, and it'll save you some heartache in the long run. Now, the recipes for these, of course, will be on my blog, which will be linked below. And some people have been saying they are having trouble navigating through the search bar on my blog site. So I will also include the link directly to the carrot cake muffins so that if you are having difficulties like that, it'll be easier for you to find. So once these have cooled down, I will keep them stored in the fridge after today. Usually the first day or so I'll leave them out. But after that, because of the cream cheese filling, I will store them in the fridge up to like 5-6 days. Usually what I do is when I'm ready for a muffin, you can either take it out and let it sit at room temperature for maybe 45 minutes, or you can heat it up in a toaster oven. I sometimes do that, and it's very nice. These will also freeze fairly well, so if you wanted to, you could throw them into a bag once they're completely cool. Do not do it when there's still moisture and steam in there. So I hope you enjoyed this recipe and this video, and if you did, I would appreciate a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet and you are looking for recipes that can help you on a weight loss journey. Share any of my videos if you think there's someone out there who would be interested in the content, and hit the notification bell for the next time I upload any sort of video. As I mentioned in my tag on Tuesday, I am planning on doing another healthy tutorial because I have been getting questions from people about some of the basics of the app, especially how to manipulate the daily and weekly bites to equal pretty much what they had on the purple, green, and blue plans previously. Although the blue, if you go into Better Balance, that's pretty much a wash. Better Balance plan is basically the blue plan. But if you wanted to adjust a few things, I will be having a video coming out on how to do all of that. So hit the notification bell so that you are alerted when that does come out, because it won't be on a Friday. I save Fridays for recipes. Also, comment down below if you're going to be trying these, and are you going to try them with or without the filling? I totally understand if it's too fussy to do the filling, and it may just be something you might want to do if you're having guests over for a nice little surprise, but if you're making them just for yourself, maybe not. So it's your call. So I'm going to patiently await for these to cool down enough for us to have one for a snack. It's not going to be easy. But until next time, bye.